Welcome, everybody. Episode number 53 of Sports Cards Live on this October 10th, 2020, Saturday night. Glad to be here. Welcome to the show. Before we get into it, I want to thank last Saturday's guest, Jake Roy of 90s B-Ball Cards. I also want to thank last Wednesday's guest, Ezra Levine, CEO of Collectible, the fractional ownership company. We will be talking a bit more about that later on tonight. I also want to thank, announce this coming Wednesday, joining me, and my guest will be Ryan Johnson. He goes by Card Collector 2 on Instagram, has almost 40,000 followers. He's also the organizer of Trade Night at the National. And then next Saturday, my guest will be Irving Minera, also known as Mustache Breaks, one of the original group breakers. So that should be a great time. We're going to have him on and have a nice conversation a week from today. Want to welcome any new viewers to the show. Thank you for joining. I want to thank Drew Herdon, tonight's guest, for helping publicize this episode and bring in some new viewers to the show. Well, I welcome all of you, and I ask you to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't yet. I'd greatly appreciate that. Your comments and questions are in play tonight, so feel free to post them up in the comments on YouTube and or Facebook, and we will try to address each and every one of those. I also want to let you guys know tonight at 10:30 Mountain Time, that's 12:30 a.m. tonight Eastern, 9:30 Pacific, I will be back for the After Hours episode. We will be talking about all that's going on in the world of Pokemon, and there is quite a bit. I have joining me Karn Rai of the Big Three. He's my Pokemon go-to guy, as well as Jeff Wolf, the president of Iconic Auctions, which is the auction house that sold the Shadowless Charizard and a PSA 10 last night at auction for $220,000 US. So he'll be on later on tonight to break that down and talk about that with us. So that should be a great time. All right, tonight's guest, he started in the hobby with his dad getting him packs when he was 5 years old. He stashed away his collection from about the year 2000 until 2012 when he came back. And when his son was born in 2015, he came back with a vengeance. He works with Vintage Breaks. He runs DH Sports Cards. And his content portfolio includes Let Me Get That Podograph podcast, YouTube's Hobby Hotline, and Roughing the Passer. He's a fan of the Florida Marlins, the Carolina Panthers, the Colorado Avalanche, and last night's Game 5 winner, the Miami Heat. Originally from Florida, currently hailing from North Carolina. Let's bring him out. Drew Herdon. Drew, welcome to episode 53, Sports Cards Live. How are you doing tonight, my friend?
Doing good, man. Wow, that's probably the coolest intro I've ever gotten, so I appreciate that. That's awesome. Glad to be here.
Hey, man, my pleasure. That's what we strive to do here on Sports Cards Live. Make you feel like as special as you should and give you the rightful intro. So, listen, I mean, I want to start off with an exciting topic, and considering you're a Miami Heat fan, and last night the Heat, they pushed the Lakers back another game here. So how are you feeling after that win last night, Drew?
I'm loving it. Tyler Herro's loving it. It's a beautiful day. I expected us to win that game. The Lakers made me mad switching from those Kobe jerseys that they'd planned on wearing only in Game 7, switching those to that game. Kind of a little insulting, I think, to the Heat, because that they kind of were prepping those jerseys for when they won the title. And so a little insulting. But, I mean, this is a Heat team that they're ridiculous. I mean, even without Dragic, even without Bam, this is still a very deep team, but when you add in Bam, it really changes the whole complexion of the game, especially if they're going to have AD or LeBron isolate Jimmy Butler. Like, you're going to have to drag Jimmy Butler off the court. He's going to die before he loses his championship. Like, he forget about it. He literally is going to have to be pulled off of that court before they lose. I think, I don't know. I was impressed. I thought we were going to win the game, but I'm glad we did.
Yeah, well, hey, congrats to you as a fan. I mean, very exciting. And I certainly want to get into what it means for the hobby and what it means for the cards of, guys like LeBron James and Tyler Herro specifically. LeBron had a 40-point game last night in a losing effort. You don't see that very often. Yeah. Tyler Herro had, I think it was, just about 12 points or so last night, a far cry from his high of 37 in the playoffs, which, after that 37-point game, the hobby went nuts for the guy's cards, and now he's back to what he usually does. What causes a player like that, a young player, a rookie, to to all of a sudden come out with a 37-point game. Where does that come from? Does it come out of nowhere, or what?
No.
What in the game allowed for that to happen that night?
Well, Herro's had that in him all along. Spolster at the beginning of the year, when this season started, Herro was a project. Him and Kendrick Nunn were a project. Kendrick Nunn a little less so. Nunn was actually more highly thought of because of what he'd done in the G League. Herro was really there for depth off the bench and to learn and be one of those guys that could give you a couple of good minutes. And during the year, that's mostly what he was. And then I don't know what happened during the bubble. I don't know what, I mean, a little bit before the break, he was starting to pick it up. But then after that bubble, I mean, the light turned on. It turned on for the whole team, but it just turned on for him. And once he got the confidence to shoot, the kid, I say it all the time and people laugh. They think it's a joke. But if he lives up to his potential, the kid can revolutionize the position that he plays, because he can play shooting guard or small forward. No problem whatsoever. He can guard both of them whatsoever. But if he has that confidence to shoot, there's things he can do that no one else in the league at that position can do. And so I think the sky's the limit for Herro. I think you're going to see hobby-wise, once the season's over, you're going to see a drop. Because he's not a Laker or somebody like that. Unless they win the championship, then you might not see a drop because there's such a quick turnaround. I mean, Prism draft picks is already coming out soon, but so I mean, they're already about to have the draft. But I mean, I think Herro can easily, he's going to be one of those rookies that if he doesn't get that hype leading up to next year, as soon as the ball drops and they start playing, he's going to have that hype, because the Heat are only going to get better. They're going to add another superstar. And now Herro is going to be one of those guys that slotted in at the 2 or the 3. Like, he's set. So whoever comes to add, you're playing Jimmy Butler, Bam, Herro, and blank, whoever that free agent is. So I love that team. I love where he's positioned. And I think the Heat are going to be right where they are right now next year, hopefully up 3 games or up a couple of games instead of, down 1.
So what are you expecting for game 6?
I think the Heat win. I think it goes 7. I think it goes 7, 100%. I think people underestimate how good Bam is and the mismatches he causes, because at least the way the Lakers are playing him, I'm surprised. They're taking one player and they're choosing to ISO on him, which you have to, because you're taking another player and ISOing on Butler, and you're leaving all those other Heat players and saying, shoot. Well, the Heat have 7 players deep, maybe 8, 7.5. They can give you 20 points a night on any given night. And so that's where, they can become very dangerous. And as soon as they got Bam back, the way the Lakers are playing them, the mismatches are there. They just have to take advantage of it.
Yeah, nice balanced team. Meanwhile, when you look at the scoring summary, on LA, it's usually LeBron and his sidekick there, whose name is just escaping me for a second.
Anthony Davis.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'm thinking Paul Anthony. Yeah. So I think the balanced team is certainly an advantage, and but it's tough to keep LeBron down. That's for sure. Let's just go to a few comments here, and we have a good comment from Paul. But welcome to you, Paul. Good evening. We have Rich Klein in the audience.
Rich?
Welcome. Enjoyed watching you this morning, sir. Terry, welcome to the show. Glad to have you catching us live tonight. Great to have you. Awesome. And then Paul says he's cheering for the Heat more because I dislike LeBron. All right.
Hey, we'll take it. We'll take it. Jump on the bandwagon for a week or two, man. Hey, join the club.
That's your right, Paul. No doubt about it. Paul says, fun fact, LeBron has 5 finals games with 40 points in a loss, and it's a record. Well, yeah, you don't see it often, but that's certainly telling to some degree for sure. Let's see. Rich says, Drew has a young son. Based on your trenchant comments from this morning, what cards would he put away for his son at this point? That's a great question. Drew, what cards would you be putting away for your little guy?
Well, I am putting them away. I've got quite a nice collection. A couple of them are out here. Little things from rookies like Kobe rookies, like Fleer Metal Kobe rookies. I'm a big fan of EX So the old EX cards, I get a lot of them graded, like Iverson, things like that. My East Carolina and Carolina Panthers collection, I do a lot of memorabilia for those. Patrick Waugh autograph sticks, probably right up there at the top, because that's kind of like my holy grail sitting on the wall. But tons. Yeah, I'm keeping back, I grade a ton. So I always throw back a couple. He's got a couple of Cunha, Sotos, Brady's, all those things, throw them back too. So, even if he decides he just wants to sell them one day, even though he's getting into Pokemon and he's got Pokemon cards at PSA right now, and he's learning what patience means. And as soon as he does get them back, he's already wanting to flip them for more packs. So he knows what his dad does. He definitely pays attention. That's for sure.
Little businessman. Good to hear.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
Paul says the loquacious Rich Klein deals trenchant in his first question. I love it. All right, we have a comment from App Freeze Cards. Welcome to the show, App Freeze. Says, I'm skeptical to put too much emphasis on shooters during the bubble. They're shooting on the same court each day, not something that happens normally. Depth perception changes at each venue. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I hadn't thought about it. The one thing I will mention to that is that, at least it's balanced. It's all equal amongst all the teams. So I don't think you have any advantages or disadvantage, all else being equal. But what are your thoughts on that, Drew?
No, I completely agree with them. I think that's how the Heat were able to get on this rhythm. I think they found a place they were comfortable. I think the Heat, this type of a team, the way the Heat are coached, the way that I know that organization, I was a small paper, but a beat writer down there for a couple of years before I came up and did work with the Panthers. And I know how they run their organization. I know how Pat Riley runs it. That this team's built for that type of environment. If you can isolate that team and get them to where they can't do anything except for be with each other, that's what Pat Riley would dream of. I mean, that's his ideal scenario. And so I think that's why the Heat excelled, ran through the bubble undefeated, ran through the first round. And I think that's a big reason why they are here this year, outside of, getting a couple of good bounces going their way as well. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, you should always put caution on certain shooters, but for Tyler Herro, I'm looking at him in comparison to other rookies and looking at his price point compared to other rookies that have done nothing, and other rookies that have put up, or second or third year players that are garnering more attention. Me personally, I know there's some bias being a Heat fan, but Herro is someone that I see slotted in on a team, on a starting rotation on a team that's about to land another major star that's already in the finals. It reminds me of right before Kevin Durant went to Golden State. And, that can be dangerous. And any rookie that's starting with that group that is a shooter is going to benefit from being with those guys on the court.
Yeah, fair enough. I remember it was back in around July, Drew, and I caught on to Tyler Herro, and I actually watched a few of his kind of highlight videos and read a little bit about him. And the one thing that stuck out to me that I read was that he's a very, very confident young man. And I like that in an athlete. Someone who's confident in themselves is, they're not going to settle for less. They're going to work hard. They're going to practice hard. So I went out and I consulted with a few of my basketball buddies to see, hey, do you think Tyler Herro is a guy to buy a few cards of, someone to invest in? And they both kind of said, I don't know, maybe, but I don't know. So I didn't bother. I didn't take it any further. And then look what happens a couple months later. And I think I was onto something, and my consultants weren't. So I'm going to start to maybe consult for myself a little bit more when it comes to basketball.
No, absolutely.
And, there was like a gold Prism 10 out there that sold back then for, it was still expensive. It was probably $2,500 it sold for, but now what would that go for? 10 grand easy. So sometimes you just got to trust your gut and go with things. And again, we're talking basketball, but I do want to work it into the hobby. A couple more comments here. Then I want to talk about LeBron's values and what's going on with him based on this series. But we got Dustin in the house. Dustin from the Personal Finance Dad, guys. Check out his YouTube channel. Welcome to the show, Dustin. Good to see you again, my friend.
Bud.
90s hockey collector in the house. Welcome to you. Hello to you, sir. Jeff McMahon, welcome to the show. Dominic LaRouche, how you doing? Rich Klein says, I put trenchant in just for you, Paul. There you go. We got Jake in the house from 90s B-Ball Cards. Jake,
Nice.
welcome.
What's up, Jake?
Check out Jake's channel, 90s B-Ball Cards. And we got Cardboard Nostalgia Billy in the house. He says, LeBron said it was a bad pass. No idea why he passed up the easy foul. Doesn't seem like the GOAT should be making that pass with seconds to go. That was the pass to Danny Green that just didn't hit and win the game. So, all right, man. Well, as far as LeBron goes, Drew, his card values, they've obviously, like everybody else during the pandemic, they've gone up in value. And the question that comes to mind, and I got a feeling about this, but I'll ask your opinion. Do you think that LeBron potentially winning his 4th championship this year, is it already baked into the prices that his cards are selling for? Or if he wins, are we going to see an instant overnight elevation in the value of his cards, because of winning a 4th championship?
I think you're definitely going to see an elevation in his cards if they win. I think you're going to see a large elevation in certain ones, mainly being his first couple years and prisms, stuff like that. I definitely think you're going to see an increase. I think you're going to see an increase in Anthony Davis, which is deserved. I think, which is well deserved. I mean, he's been underrated for a long time because he was on such a bad team. But I think Davis, you might see a little bit bigger bump percentage wise. Maybe he might not sell for as much, but compared to what he was selling for, he'll probably see the biggest bump. But I definitely think LeBron's going to see a bump. I know I've got a couple of pretty high-end LeBron cards that are on eBay with, I don't really care to sell them. I'll sell them when I'll sell them. So there's a pretty high number on them. And, I've been getting offers sent for the whole season because they're graded nice LeBrons. And I know the offers keep going up almost by the game. And so I definitely think him winning a championship in LA, that's a bigger deal than people think. That market is enormous. That market is starving for something again. Him winning another championship is big in that market, especially I think for his rookies, key cards, and those especially with him in a Laker uni. I think you're going to see a big bump on those cards.
I'd like to, I appreciate the opinion, and I think there's some accuracy to that. I think that you are going to see a bit of a bump, but I was of the opinion that, because I think a lot of people assume that this 4th win is going to happen. This 4th chip is going to land in his pocket. And I think so because of that, I do think that people have already somewhat priced it in. Yeah. But that said, when you made a good point that, his first in LA, which I'm aware of, but it's a good point. Lakers fans, casual Lakers fans, maybe non-hobbyists, if he wins that championship, they might then go looking to buy some cards of his thinking, oh, I've heard the sports card hobby is hot. LeBron's on our team. He just helped bring a championship home. I need to go buy one of his rookie cards. They may not think to do that until after he wins. And maybe that will fuel an increase. But the season collectors out there, our audiences, you and me, I mean, I think we've already baked it in. It's like if he wins it, it's great, but it's not necessarily going to change what his legacy will be. Although taking the championship to LA, I think will. What do you think? What do you think of that?
No, I agree with you. I think the season collector absolutely has baked it in their mind because, I mean, even me, a diehard Heat fan, I mean, I still think we can come back and win, but I'm expecting LeBron to get his, championship. And if I was buying cards, I would be buying it like he had. And if and the way I'm pricing him like he has. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you there. But I do think when people see that, whatever type of parade it is, whatever digital parade they're watching or whatever they're watching from their apartment buildings, however they do this, whatever the celebration is, once you start seeing the celebration, you start seeing the merch, you start seeing, I mean, now they start turning on Instagram. I mean, it's not going to be long before quite a few rappers. I mean, you watch today's Hobby Hotline. A lot of rappers getting into this hobby right now before a lot of people start breaking and stuff like that. I mean, there's this whole other segment that's coming into this industry, this I hate calling it cardboard now. I like Brian Gray and I were talking about, it's art. Into this art world that we're in now. There's so many new people. I think it's going to fuel a lot more than people think. And there's a lot of new money coming in, and they're going to be the ones. Los Angeles, the Lakers, historic franchise, and it's LeBron. So, I think we're going to see. I think we're going to see a lot of increase across the board, but I think LeBron in particular.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and you bring up another good point. Being it's in LA, you got all these sort of celebrities and influencers coming into the hobby recently. I certainly can see that being a potential for additional increases in values. I'd like to hear from the viewers. If anyone out there, like, what do you guys think? Is there still room for and I'm talking about LeBron James specifically because he is LeBron James. Is there room for his cards to go up more, and like how much more? Like how if the cards are going to go up, say, the amount they're going to go up is say 100 units, and how much has it already gone up because people expect it, and how much can it still go up once he wins for the first time in LA? Has it gone up 50% of what it can go up? And the other piece of it, Drew, as you well know, is that the whole hobby is on an upswing. And you see headlines now about the hobby cooling down. It's not cooling down. It's cooling down on some commodity cards of players who are still playing, but it's not necessarily cooling down that much. So, I mean, have the increases in LeBron cards that we've seen recently, is that simply because of what's going on in the overall hobby? It's happening to lots of cards. Or is it because the hobby is baking in this fourth championship that he may or may not win in the next week or so? So I wonder, and we got some comments coming in. I thank everyone for that. So Drew, before we move on, we'll just take a look at some more of these comments. Sure. We got J-Rod. J-Rod, welcome to the show. Great to have you. Bobby Burrell's in the house. Bobby, welcome as always, my friend. Paul Cashman says the GOAT, Michael Jordan, didn't make that pass. LOL. Facebook user says comparing Jordan and LeBron is really apples and oranges to two different players, different styles, different paths to greatness. Totally agree with that. Yeah, you see the GOAT discussion all the time. You see these very aggressive debates on Facebook and elsewhere, and you know what? They're co-goats. They're both excellent players. They're both legends and icons and cultural phenomenons. It's really quite amazing that they've both been able to achieve the status that they have. We have app freeze cards back. Emotion can definitely cause a temporary inflation, right? Winning is a big deal. People love when their teams win. Yes. Seb Mena says, and what if the Lakers lose? Will LeBron RCs go down? Good question, Drew. If the Heat win, what happens to LeBron rookie card values?
I won't care for about 2 weeks, but when I do finally look, I think exactly. I think they'll go back to probably like around where they were. I don't think they necessarily go down. If they do, if they plummet and start to drop that low because of that, I'm scooping up everyone I can. I'm selling off a bunch of cards that I never planned on selling, and I'm buying a bunch of those. Because if they're going to drop that much, that's absurd. Because like you just said, like you can call Michael Jordan the GOAT. I grew up watching him. I'm 36 years old, so I grew up with Jordan literally as my childhood. I absolutely consider him the GOAT. But if you're talking about this era and you can't understand how good LeBron is, then it's just absolutely blind hatred. He's a GOAT of his era. And you look at what Jordan cards are doing. Yes, they did their ups and downs too, but then they found that steady incline. And LeBron's will do that as well. They'll do it definitely while he's playing. They'll bounce up and down. And so, they'll probably go down a little bit. But if people are crazy enough to drop them that much, shoot, I'm selling everything. I'll get a bank loan to buy 10 of them. I mean, that's the most absurd thing in the world to me, because it's a guarantee in 5 to 10 years they go back up. When he's retired and not playing all the time, once he plays with his kid he wants to play with his kid for a year, which is 2 years away, and then he's done. And once that's done, you're going to see, and he's gone, and all we do is look back at videotapes. I mean, you can't look back at a LeBron highlight reel and not tell me he's just dominated a generation. So, I mean, they'll probably go back down, but they'll be right back up.
Yeah, I agree, man. If you're gonna sell his cards after if he doesn't win the championship, it's very short-sighted. You're gonna sell at the worst time. Yeah. But I do also agree, Drew, that if he doesn't win this year, the values will come down a little bit because everybody who's kind of baked those values, baked the win into the values. Well, now that win never happened. So if his top chrome in a base in a PSA 10 is worth $13,000 right now, I can see it coming down to maybe 11.5. And I know that card bounces around every day, but I can see it kind of the average price coming down maybe 10%, 15, 20 max. But as soon as next season, start ramping up for next season and he plays his first couple games and he looks good again, you're going to see him right back to where they were, would be my expectation. Of course, we can't predict exactly what will happen, and there are all sorts of other things that could happen, but I do expect exactly what you're thinking as well. Great question, Seb. Thank you so much. Yam says if LeBron wins 2 in LA, that's when the values could really move. I mean, that's huge. That's 5 championships all of a sudden. That's, good point, Yam. Appreciate it. And I think we both totally agree with you there. Terry says, I definitely think there's room for James to grow. I think this championship is already baked in, though, and we won't see a huge bump with the win here. Long term, I think they have plenty of upside. Fair comments. Long term, I agree. Plenty of upside as he goes down with, he's already a legend, an icon. So it's hard to say when he goes down, in his twilight years as a legend and an icon when you're already there. But let's see what else he does. There's still years to play. As Fleming says, risk asymmetric. If he doesn't win, will go down more than what it will go up if he does win. Interesting thought. So if he doesn't win, the decrease will be more than the increase if he does win. What do you think of that opinion, Drew?
Short term, yes. And short term meaning like a couple of months. The NBA season's a very fast turnaround this year. Once the finals are over, there's about a couple of weeks, and then we have the draft, and then it goes right into training camp. I mean, there's games on Christmas. They want to kick the season off on Christmas. So, I mean, no later than Christmas is the season right back started. So for a couple months, absolutely. But like you said, no matter what, going into next year, starting to ramp up, I mean, they're going to start off huge. They're going to start off big. I guarantee you LeBron will make sure he has plenty of video showing him on a redemption if he loses, he'll make it a movie, in whatever, and put it out through 80 different media channels. But I mean, he'll make sure you pay attention to him enough to where they'll go back up as soon as that season starts. But yeah, short term, absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree with this comment as well. And it goes back to the whole thing that the prices are a little bit baked in. So if it doesn't happen, that bake can easily fall. No problem. But again, I think there's a baseline with how low this card can go, just because where the hobby in general is at, and all the new money. And LeBron's one of the prime targets for these investors, if you will. Yeah. Terry says, remember Mahomes went down after he won the Super Bowl. The market gets temporarily flooded. Yeah, good point. We don't know yet what we'll see in terms of cards flooding the market. But I wonder, Terry and Drew, I wonder if the market learned anything from the Pat Mahomes experience. Now I know it's a different sport. We're almost a year later, but I wonder if the hobby in general will have learned anything. Drew, what do you think we've learned anything in general?
Well, I don't really. I mean, the Mahomes stuff, I think that was because the rookie class coming in right after was incredibly talented. And so the football hadn't had the money that's coming into it this year yet. The investing market, the prospecting market, all that new money had not come into football last year. And so, I mean, it had started to trickle in, but not how it is now at all. And so, I mean, to the point where I could buy Prism blasters of last year up until 6 months ago on the shelves. I mean, the money was not in there. The chase was not in there, but people started following every single sport now. And so I don't think that it's necessarily that it cooled as much as the money. I mean, it did cool, but it cooled because the money was going after other hot rookies. Well, this NBA draft class, not that this is going to be one of those classes where we're going to need the second, third, and fourth year players and the vets to carry us. We're going to need some rookies from last year. Okiki coming back from injury. I think he wins Rookie of the Year. He's one of the best buys in sports cards right now. Chuma Okiki for the Magic. We've got a lot of players coming back from injury that were drafted this last year that are going to be the ones to really watch, because this draft is pretty weak outside of a couple of people. But that draft class right after Mahomes was stacked. And so I think the money that was in the market at the time was just so spread out over that there was no choice but for the Mahomes to cool a little bit. Now, if the same thing happened now, I don't think you'd see him cool. With the type of money that's in the market now, I don't think you'd see that happen again.
Yeah, and I think people just believe that Mahomes is going to be a perennial, contender, if not winner.
Right.
So I definitely agree with you there. Hello to Troublemaker Cards. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining. Say hello to Steve Menzie. Good to have you here, Steve. Steve is the owner of the Toronto Sports Card Expo, and we'll be running the virtual expo, partnering with Mr. Edelstein from the Chicago Spectacular. So you'll all want to check out that virtual show, November 21 and 22, I believe. It's a Saturday, Sunday. I will be set up as a vendor. It'll be a fun 2 full days of live streaming from your booth and showing cards and hopefully buying some cards too. So welcome to the show, Steve. And Legion, as always, welcome. Good to see you back yet again. All right, Jake from 90s B-Ball Cards. He says, I think a lot of LBJ cards have a 4th ring baked into the price, but I agree with Drew that those entry-level cards of his could see an uptick due to new interest from casual people. Topps rookie card, early LA cards. I think we both have already sort of agreed with that, Drew. Yeah, Jake, we're right there with you. J-Rod says, the older this current 18 to 25-year-old generation gets, the higher his cards will go. I'm 38. Jordan is my GOAT. Yeah, like that's exactly how this hobby works. We talked about that this morning on Hobby Hotline when I was a call-in guest, right? Yeah, you nailed it, J-Rod. That's exactly. He goes on to say, for these young, Jordan is my GOAT. For these younger collectors, LeBron is their GOAT. His card prices will increase with their disposable income. Bang on, man. You nailed it right there. Sean Robb, welcome to the show. Sean says, the last game was the first game shown on television in China in almost a year. I think the price of basketball cards are determined by the new demand from Asia to Europe. Yeah, Sean, I can't disagree with that, man. That's a very astute comment, I think, at this point in time. Drew, you talked earlier about the new money, the investors coming in. And when we talk about new money and investors, I think about people in the United States, maybe Canada, maybe a bit of, South America. I don't think to Europe and Asia as much. And a lot of the reason I don't is because I had Ken Golden on the show. It was a couple weeks, or actually it was the Wednesday before the Trout Superfractor sold. I had him on the show, and I asked him, where is all this new money coming from? Because he's got the biggest mailing list in the business.
Right. Yeah.
And he said it's domestic for the most case. It's domestic money. So I mean, that's what's interesting. But if you look at what Sean is saying, that's just more fuel to this fire, right? It's just you've got that going on, but you've also got these collectors in Asia who love their basketball, love their collecting. So, I wonder if we have kind of, we've got gas coming into 2 tanks into this thing, and we're just going to chug along here. So that's what I think. Anyway, does that make sense to you, Drew?
No, absolutely. I think you're right on. And I mean, the market overseas is incredibly important to this card market. It has a lot to do with how it's exploded, but it's only a segment now. Now a lot of it, like we talked about today on Hobby Hotline, as Brian Gray said, hedge fund managers, people in the entertainment sector. There's a lot of other people that are really sinking a lot of money into this hobby domestically, but overseas, I can't tell you the amount of basketball cards and surprisingly now football cards that I sell overseas. Like I know with baseball, I don't really ship internationally on eBay and stuff like that. But if it's a basketball or a football card, absolutely. And the amount that I send to Australia, to Hong Kong, to to China, to England. I mean, you name it. It's every week, and it's constantly. They buy up a lot of high-end stuff, and they buy up a lot of Prism. They buy up a lot of second-year stuff. They buy up a lot of silvers, regardless of the year. I mean, there's certain things that they really seem to pump a lot of money into, but absolutely, that money coming in is a massive reason. It was really the start of everything. And that's what brought in, I think, even more domestic money and brought in those hedge funds and brought it to where it was. When that money from the outside started coming in into more than just one sport, that's when the snowball really started to roll, I think.
Yeah. Oh, fair, man. Fair. Okay, let's keep going. Paul says, I could see LeBron commodity cards take a dip, but the premium ones would maintain. Yeah. And I think that's all. I agree with that in any situation where there's the prospect of a player's cards going down. The commodity cards are the ones that are always there. You have no problem finding them for sale. Yeah, they're the ones that are, because supply is just so high on them all the time. So basic economics there. App Freeze says his top rookie card is very popular, but does the fact that he isn't in uniform turn anyone else off? I prefer the Bowman for this reason, or the Chrome for those who can afford. Yeah, I'm right there with you, App. I mean, that's exactly, you look at Tom Brady, for example. He's got like 35 rookie cards and only a handful are Patriots cards. I only want the Patriots cards in my collection. I think the same thing applies. Drew, what are your thoughts? Even like from what you're seeing from your customers, but also personally.
Personally, I can't stand owning cards of players that aren't on my team unless I'm collecting, like, obviously, like I like Allen Iverson. So, I mean, I'll collect him and whatever he wants to wear because I don't cheer for any of the teams he was on. I just like him. But if it's my team, no, I don't want him. If we're talking LeBron and I'm a Laker fan, let's say, sure, absolutely, yeah. I want his first Prism in a Laker uniform. That would be the card that I want. Would I want a rookie? Absolutely, because of the value. Not would I want to display it as much as everything else? Probably not.
So let me ask you this a bit. Let me just change the question a little bit. What do you think the hobby, App Freeze and myself, we're saying we want rookie cards of players in their professional jersey, not their college, not their junior, nothing like that. We want professional jersey for rookie cards. Right. I mean, would you, if you were a rookie card collector across more than just your own teams, would you want the players pictured in their professional jersey? Yeah, I think I think it's somewhat universal, but I'm sure there are people out there that don't care. They just want that RC designation on the card that they own and one that they can afford. And maybe they can't afford sometimes to have it in the professional jersey. So they have to settle for something less. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. No. Terry says, I rarely ship anything overseas. I do buy a fair amount from Asia, especially Bowman baseball. Nothing wrong with that. And then Yamwax pops up with a hot take. He says, Charizard and Harry Potter may be bigger goats for Gen Z and young millennials. And what about Fortnite? Like, Panini made Fortnite cards. And right? Like there's gotta be something in there that's gonna be worth something sometime with all the people and influencers and celebrities and athletes that play a ton of Fortnite when they're on the road and in their hotel rooms. Yeah. What are they going to be buying in 20 years? They're going to be buying, sports cards. Maybe. Are they going to be buying Fortnite cards? Yeah. Maybe they will. It's nostalgic. Just for the same reason that you got 30, 40, 50-year-olds buying Pokemon right now. Yeah. But yeah, good comment. Yam. I know Yam's big into the Pokemon and knows what he's talking about. So I appreciate the comment. Cardboard Billy says PSA 10 Charizard Hollow. Yeah, well, it actually sold for $220,000 last night. That card, Iconic Auctions, run by Jeff Wolf, who's in the audience and will be joining us on After Hours in a couple hours from now. His company sold the card. They broke the record last night. The card was sold to a rapper who goes by the name of Logic. You may have heard of him, and he bought that card for $220,000. So, I mean, that is certainly the GOAT of non-sports cards. Like I don't think anything else comes close. And not to mention that last night, Logan Paul, one of the biggest influencers out there, he broke an original booster box of the first edition on his YouTube channel. Every pack. Now he didn't break it for himself. He sold the packs off one by one to people in the audience for $11,111. After he bought it. And I don't know if he made money on this box or not.
He did it for charity.
Yeah, and they raised a lot of money. They raised over $100,000 for charity last night for mental health, which is a wonderful thing.
Right.
But they had, and I was watching this stream last night. If you didn't see this, anyone out there, they had no less than 250,000 people watching it, up to 300, just over 300,000. And I saw overall, he said, over 1 million unique views. Now, I don't care what sport you're breaking any era of pack from, baseball, football, basketball, hockey, golf, doesn't matter. You're not getting that kind of audience for any sport. You might not get that kind of audience if you took all those sports combined on a live break. So Pokemon is definitely a segment of the cardboard hobby that is for real. Canner Collects, welcome to the show, says, I prefer Brady in his Michigan uniform. His Upper Deck Pros and Prospects is my favorite. Go Blue. And you know what? I can understand that if you prefer it for one of two reasons. One, you just think the card is more beautiful, more eye appeal, more aesthetically pleasing. Or two, you followed him in college and that's your college team. But if you don't follow college football, which most football fans pretty much do, but if you don't and you are a fan of the New England Patriots, or you collect Hall of Famer rookie cards or soon to be Hall of Famer rookie cards, I can't see why you wouldn't want one in that has him pictured in a Patriots jersey, even if it's practice jersey, which some of them are. Right. But each to their own, and completely respect any way that anybody approaches this hobby, as long as you're not being a scammer or committing fraud. I condone any approach to this hobby. Billy says Steve Aoki, the DJ, just bought one last week for 170,000. Yeah, I mean, that's how fast these things can go up in value. And let's also remember that they're not all the same, right? Not all PSA 10s are the same. Some will be centered better than others. Some might have, they're just not. So the one that Jeff Wolf's Iconic Auctions sold last night might have been better than the one Steve Aoki bought in terms of condition. So very fair. And then Paul jumps in. I love when the audience takes digs at me, Drew. You ever experience that? It's kind of fun. But I don't mind.
Are you kidding me? All the time, man.
All the time, right? All the time. Paul says, waiting for Jeremy to announce his next iconic card purchase is a Charizard. Well, stay tuned for after hours, Paul. You just might, your wish just might come true. We will see. We will see. All right. So that's some good stuff there. Let's move on to another topic, Drew. Let's talk about another hot one that's in the hobby right now, and it does tie into the guest that I had on this show on Wednesday. Ezra Levine is the CEO from Collectible, the Collectible app, fractional ownership. They're in the space. The other notable company is called Rally Road. They also do fractional ownership. Rally Road does fractional ownership into collector vehicles, jewelry, handbags, and of course sports cards and memorabilia, whereas Collectible is sticking with sports cards and memorabilia, just to let everybody know. And there's a lot, it's somewhat of a polarizing topic. A lot of people think to themselves, why would I buy a share in something that I'm never going to see, touch, or hold? But a lot of people are buying a share in something that they're never going to see, touch, or hold. Where do you stand on just for yourself, Drew? Where do you stand on fractional ownership the way it looks today?
Well, I actually let me get that Podograph about 2-3 episodes ago. I had the CEO of Rally on my show, and I talked to him for a while, and I tried the app out. I used Rally. I put a little bit of money in, not a ton, but put a little in to try it out, put some stuff down on some Jerry Rice, a couple of Kobe's, actually went and looked at a couple of books, a little bit of wine, stuff like that. It's interesting to me. I think the idea is really cool. I just think that there needs to be a little better execution of it. I think it would make it, at least the way Rally's set up. I don't know how the other one that you had just mentioned is set up. I'm unfamiliar with their app. I know the company, but as far as the interface in the app and how they run their auctions, I'm unfamiliar with it. But the thing that disappoints me, at least in terms of Rally, is once the initial offering closes, it's closed for quite some time. And so for quite some time, it's just locked up. You have no idea. There's no, it's not like a fluid actual like market or anything along those lines. It's like it's closed and then they promote an opening. It opens back up and you can do it. And I guess this is really big in the art world. And as I keep preaching, it's not cardboard anymore. What we're dealing with now, we are in the art industry. This is art. And I mean, apparently this is huge in the art industry. And if it is, I mean, I think it could be something here to stay. I'll tell you, I like it a lot better than trying to use blockchain technology for actual trading cards.
Yeah.
If we're going to do something along those lines, I'd much rather have this than blockchain with trading cards. Use blockchain to help track inventory, track patches, track, scamming. Lots of checks. Like if I get to pick, how I'm going to use technology in the hobby, please, put it over there. But I think there's a couple of holes and things that need to be worked on. But it's fun and it's quite interesting.
Yeah. Well, good, man. I appreciate the thoughts. And I ask the viewers out there, please post up in the comments whether fractional ownership, to the degree you understand it, at this point, is it something that might be for you, might not be? And if you do, just give a reason why yes or no. And, just so we have something to kind of analyze it by. I had, again, the other company besides Rally is called Collectible, and Ezra Levine's the CEO, and he was the one that was on my show on Wednesday. And we talked for a couple hours on the topic. So I encourage anyone who wants to really gain an understanding of what Collectible is doing and how they're executing and what their plans are, go back and watch that episode. And I'll let everybody know, if you're new to Sports Cards Live, all of my episodes are long. So, don't feel like you got to watch all 2 hours at once. Watch them 10 minutes here, 15 there, 20 minutes there. YouTube will always remember where you left off, and you can kind of bite it off a little bit at a time. I encourage you to do it that way. But as far as fractional ownership, a couple things, Drew. So like you said, you buy, they have an offering, and the offering's open for, say, a month or a week, whatever it is, until the shares sell out. The shares, and they've all been selling out basically same day so far as collectibles happen. So there's been no issue about selling out the shares. So they open it up they open up the shares. You can buy them on the app, and then once they're sold out, they're sold out. And then you have to hold those shares for 90 days before you can trade them. That's a securities law. That's all that is.
Oh, okay.
And I believe that's securities law. I believe it is, because I can't think of any other reason why you would lock those shares up for 90 days or whatever it is. So you've got that lockup period. You can't do anything. The value of the asset can go up or down during that period. That's just out of your hands. Once that 90 days is up, you're now free to trade those shares on the secondary market, which is going to happen on their app. So what that implies is that there is a secondary market, that there is liquidity. That means that there are people willing to buy your shares for more or less than what you bought them for. Depends what you want to do. But in my mind, if I'm going to buy fractional ownership shares into an asset like a 53 Topps Mickey Mantle or a LeBron James 2003 Exquisite RPA, and whatever it may be, I'm not buying those personally. I wouldn't be buying those to flip those shares within the first 6 or 12 months. I would be buying them to hold them long term. Now, I wouldn't buy those shares to replace my collecting cards and physically having them in my hand, because just like Todd says, and Todd, welcome to the show. Todd says he's not sold yet on fractional ownership. He'd personally want to have possession of the card. I think everybody feels that way in this hobby. If you're a collector, you don't want to just look on a screen or your phone at how many shares you have. You want to have that card. But here's where I challenge viewers. And again, I don't have any skin in the game. But I still, for the sake of discussion, I challenge people in the hobby to say, well, I can still buy and sell cards. I can still buy and collect cards and hold them for my whole life if I want. But you can also take a couple $100 if you have it and buy some shares of some of these cards that you're never going to see, touch, or hold, but you at least have a piece of them. And a lot of people say that it's just about being able to brag and saying I own a piece of that, and really, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do. I think is it to brag, or is it just kind of cool? I'd love to say I own a share of a Honus Wagner T206 because I'll never buy the real thing. And to be honest, I don't want the real card. It's not a card that I covet for my personal collection. But would I own a share of it? I would. And would and I wouldn't ever plan to sell it. I'd probably pass that share on or sell it, at the very end type of thing. But kind of my thoughts on it. To me, it's not one or the other. You can do both. And I also think that it's going to help
just the existence, Drew, and this is where I want to hear what you think of this. The existence of fractional ownership businesses, and I think we're seeing more of them come on, and I think we're going to see more. It's providing liquidity for these high value cards, because all of a sudden you don't need 100 millionaires or billionaires to come around and buy cards for millions of dollars. No, the public can it's crowdsourcing, really. Yes. They can get together and buy them together. Therefore, you can sell more of these high value cards, which I think will turn into more liquidity in the high end market. That said, and it's also going to bring business to the auction companies, because the auction companies where a lot of these cards are bought in the first place. Yeah. But it also gives consigners a second option as to what to do with their assets. They want to give them to an auction company to sell, or they want to move them over to fractional ownership. What do you think, Drew? Is this something that you can kind of do at the same time? And do you think that it's going to help? Do you think it's going to help increase the liquidity of these high-end cards?
Well, absolutely. I think you're dead on there. I think that's one thing it's going to do big time. And, I actually do fractional ownership with a group of friends of mine. There's 3 of us. We all live here in town. We're all collectors. We all run our own businesses, and we own, 1/3 of quite a few collections, cards, everything. We split it together, and we've all made out quite well doing that on making certain investments and certain moves. All the way up to, doing stuff in Rally, which hopefully, like you said, I'm not getting into Rally to say, oh, shoot, that Jerry Rice I jumped in, it's going to jump 720% and I'm going to cash right out. That's something to hold on to, like Rich was asking about stuff with Jude and stuff, some things to hold, and just look at and keep down the line. Neat things, like I've got shares in some Kobe's and stuff like that. But I do think if this process is altered, like I said, I haven't thought about it in detail enough to know exactly what I would want to alter. I just know that something needs to be tweaked a little bit on there to where, I don't know, it feels like you have a little bit more control over everything than you have now. But I definitely see, the thing I do see is this new money that's coming in this hobby that's coming from the stockbroker era, that outside the hedge fund managers, those type of people. Oh, I could see them loving this stuff, loving this high-end stuff, because they're the ones that are also using the PWCC vault where they don't see their cards. You know what I mean? They're not seeing half of what they're buying anyway. And so that's the type of people that I could really see latching onto this. And if they do, well, then it's going to be looked at as a success, because you're going to keep seeing the record values. And I think it's going to help the other cards that aren't on there as well, because you're going to get higher comps. You're going to see higher, you're going to have proof of people moving and what people are willing to go for. So, I do think it could provide some more liquidity to the high-end cards, which, I mean, let's face it, that's awesome for the hobby.
That's a good thing for sure.
Yeah.
I think you're right, man. Like when you say you think it needs to change a bit. So I think 2 things. One, I think that in time, it will evolve just like everything else does, as the people running it learn from their experience and any maybe oversights. I don't want to say mistakes, but anything that they could have done differently, they will learn and they will tweak their business model as time goes by. So it'll evolve that way. Once the secondary market is established to trade these shares, I think that's really what you want to see. Is you want to see the ability to take the shares that you have and at least go see what the offer is on them, and then you have because that gives you more control now. You can actually there's a buyer waiting, just like there is on the stock market for any stock that's out there that is worth it's worth anything really. It's liquid. You can always go. You can just put in a sell order, and they're sold instantly for you. Right. And to me, fractional ownership in cards is a lot like owning a share of a company on the stock market. You have no control over what's going on with that company, and by owning it, people say, I want to hold the card, I want to own it. Well, you own a share of Apple or Google. You can't go walk through their hallways. You can't just walk in there and say, hey, I own the place. No, it's just a number and a word on your screen when you log into your trading account. It's the same thing. It's the same thing, except that with sports cards, there's the nostalgia attachment to it. Even though you're not going to hold it, but you still know there's that coolness factor that I get, right? That I get to, The other thing, and you touched on this, Drew, very astutely, is that the casual collector is going to, or the new investor, the people that are hearing about sports cards in mainstream media right now are like, well, how do I get involved? And I don't know much. Oh, well, I can go buy shares in these things, and I don't even need to worry about physical protection of them, shipping them, insurance. I can just buy shares in this industry that is blowing up. So, I mean, I think it's here to stay. I think it's going to evolve over time. I think it's going to grow, just like grading of cards was people were about that at the beginning of time, and now it's the biggest thing going in our hobby. You know, besides the cards themselves. I think fractional ownership is here to stay. And like you said, Drew, you're doing it yourself. I've done myself. I put together a very small fund, you know, just shy of 5 digits between 5 buddies a few years ago. We bought some cards, and those friends are all happy because we've made money on those cards now. So
exactly.
Yeah. And I know for sure there's many people that have done more informal funds similar to that, but I'm probably on a much bigger scale than what I did or what you're doing. Right. So
yeah, I'm sure.
So Paul says, I'm musing that Rally Road and Collectible will have some interesting laws of unintended consequences applied once the markets open up for good and bad and America's real pastime litigation comes into play. That goes, Paul, that's definitely going to happen. They will learn as we go. They will, and there's gonna be legal action. There has to be. It wouldn't be normal if there wasn't. So I agree with that. And Fleming in the house, welcome, says, I flip cards on ComC without ever seeing them, not fractional shares. No, you own 100% of those, but similar in that I never touched the card. Difference is I can have it shipped if I choose. It's a subtle, to me, it's a subtle difference, even though it's a big deal. You can have them shipped, but just the fact that I flip cards on ComC tells me you never intend to have them shipped unless you get out of the business altogether. So, I mean, I hear you, but I don't know if that difference is if I were you, I don't know if that difference is enough to keep me away from fractional ownership, but it's a whole different game. To me, fractional ownership doesn't necessarily have to be a short-term flip. To me, it would be a long-term hold, a long-term investment. Whereas flipping cards on ComC and Herndon, that is, you're flipping as fast as you can. So I think it's a different approach altogether, but I hear what you're saying, and I certainly appreciate the comment. Jake says, when do we see corporations add sports cards to their investment portfolio? Seems like that might not be too far out. Well, the fact of the matter is, Jake, you're seeing it already. And you're seeing it already because a lot of private corporations that have money in the bank and they need to deploy those funds are going to put them in, they're going to diversify. They're going to have equities. They're going to have commodities. They're going to have bonds. They're going to have maybe some metals. And I bet you a lot of people, especially sports fans, are also putting some money into collectibles.
Oh, big time. The last two modern cards, the highest prices, the Giannis, and I can't remember which one it was before that, were both bought by the same person. It's a tech company, and they look, and from what I've been told and from what I'm looking, they're looking to change everything that they do and move towards building technology for the sports card industry. So make no mistake about it. There are a lot of very big corporations that have nothing to do with the hobby and they have nothing to do with sports right now that are adding sports cards to their portfolio, adding big cards to their portfolio, and that plan on getting into this market heavily. What you're going to see now that these businesses have opened up, now that everything's I'm not saying normal, but it's moving and getting there. You're going to see a lot of companies that you've never heard of, a lot of new faces, and a lot of very big buyers, sellers, and industries coming into play.
Yeah, and I think so. The other card was the LeBron James. Both cards were sold by Golden Auctions. The LeBron James 2003 Exquisite Gold RPA out of 23, and the Giannis Antetokounmpo Logo Man 101 were the two cards sold 1.8 million, 1.9 million. Purchased by, I think the gentleman who purchased them, his name is Lior Avidar, I believe.
Yes.
And I know he's doing something with these cards. I see him showing them off on Instagram, and I love to see them. I'm not sure what he's doing, but he's got something up his sleeve with them, and it may be it may end up being a type of fractional ownership business model as well. Not too sure, but I'm sure we'll find out soon enough. But
I know he's in the tech side of everything, and I know that they've been looking to transition their company going a different way. And so seeing the way he's looking at sports cards and getting into it, I would not be surprised to see their company in some way, shape, or form take a shift towards sports cards quickly.
Yeah, well, I think he's done that already, right? Yeah, I mean, he's in for almost $4 million in 2 cards, and he's got a lot of other cards he's shown off. So he in particular isn't new to the hobby, but I hear what you're saying. I think you're going to see a lot of casual collectors and new collectors are going to be. I've had buddies say to me, recently be like, "Hey, what should I buy?" I say, well, maybe this or that. Okay, get it for me. Well, come on, just go here. I'll show you where to go. You go get. You go buy the card. I'm not getting it for you. I'm not chasing you for money. But here's where you can go to get them. And people are buying cards that haven't before. So the hobby is growing in that fashion. I mean, we're seeing that 100%. Paul says, imagine the possibility of a suspected or alleged trimmed card getting into the hands of getting into a rally road or a collectible offering. Yeah, they need to do a ton of due diligence on every card that they're adding, and I'm sure they do. They pretty much have to. So, but yeah, smart comment, Paul, for sure. I mean, you just think back to the PSA 8 Honus Wagner, the Wayne Gretzky Bruce McNall copy that they bought back in the early 90s. That is now owned by Kendrick from the Arizona Diamondbacks. That he purchased for a 2.875, something like that. Yeah. And now, after Mastro came out and said, I trimmed that card. Yeah. That card is somewhat tainted, yet I think as Rich Klein mentioned this morning on Hobby Hotline, that card is still worth a lot of money, despite the fact that it's been, overtly known as being trimmed. So it is what it is. I mean, it's still a special card, but it's definitely got to have some taint on it now because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got that scarlet letter on it. People will always remember that one.
For sure. So, okay, I think we got fractional ownership covered. No more comments coming in on that. So thanks everybody for those comments. Good stuff. So, Drew, take a few minutes now, just a couple minutes. Just tell the audience a little bit about what you do in the hobby in terms of your content. How long have you been doing Let Me Get That Podograph? Talk a bit about Hobby Hotline and Roughing the Passer.
Sure. Well, I've been doing Let Me Get That Podograph for a little over 3 years now. Wow. Started it with co-host of mine, Stu. We did it for quite a while. Unfortunately, last year he passed away from cancer. But started the show with him, just kept going solo after that. From there, I've been in content since college. I was a broadcast journalism major as one of my 2 majors that I did. So I've always been doing some type of content, but I did beat writing and actually went into journalism for a while. But then started doing content. Did Let Me Get That Podograph for a little while and fell in love with it. And then as the hobby started to grow and I started to meet a lot of people, because 3 years ago there was Fat Packs, maybe 1 or 2 other shows, and that's about it. When we started, and at least on just the podcast side of things. And so from there, met, John Newman, Sports Card Nation, who was just on here, I know. And me and him started Roughing the Passer, which is just a strictly football show, which we do every Sunday night at 9:30 Eastern. And then at the National... Well, 2 years ago, Rob from Go GTS and I were joking around about the show Hobby Hotline. But then last year, we were kind of serious about it. And so at the National last year, a bunch of us met up and discussed Hobby Hotline and decided, hey, we'll give it a go. And, it's a lot of people, so it's a lot of schedules to coordinate with. But we ended up finding a really good group of people, and we started that show as well. And we just did episode 36 today, and it's a weekly show. So, we're solid into it. And Yeah, I've got a bunch of other shows coming up. I have no plans on stopping. I love doing it. The content, obviously, as you know, is just growing and growing and growing. And so I've got two video offshoots from Let Me Get That Podograph. It just keeps going. So
it's so much fun. It's a lot of fun doing this, man. I agree. Good. Just tell us who some of the co-hosts are that you have on Hobby Hotline. Because let me just say, what's cool about Hobby Hotline is that it's not just you hosting. You've got co-hosts. You've got a bunch of them, and you guys kind of come in week to week. You weren't even on the last couple of weeks. Before you get into that, I just want to let anyone know, if you just kind of got to the show, thanks for joining, first of all. And keep in mind, when we're done, when this episode's over at 9:30 p.m. tonight Pacific time, which is 12:30 a.m. Eastern, we're going to do the Sports Cards Live After Hours show, and joining me are going to be Karnrai, who's my go-to Pokemon expert, and Jeff Wolf, the president of Iconic Auctions, which is the auction house that sold the PSA 10 Charizard last night to rapper Logic for $220,000. So Jeff Wolf from Iconic Auctions will be joining us to break down, kind of what that sale means to the hobby, and even what it means for Iconic Auctions, and how much excitement it was for them in their office last night with that card, among other items that they sold in their auction last night. So that'll be on After Hours on the same channel at 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 Pacific tonight. So we're going for a while still tonight. But Drew, back to Hobby Hotline. Who are your co-hosts on Hobby Hotline?
Oh, man, we have
a whole roster.
Oh, we have an absolutely incredible roster. We've got myself, Val Mars, who does NASCAR radio. He's probably one of the most knowledgeable people on NASCAR and the NASCAR card market in the entire world. I think he's number one on every NASCAR PSA registry. He's one of our hosts. We've got John Newman, of course, from Sports Card Nation. He's a part of the show. We've also got Mike Summer, who still is a guest co-host now. He was full-time, but he just opened up a shop. So while he's getting settled in with his shop, he's doing part-time. Then he'll be back full-time again. He does Wax Pack Hero. Then we have the great Rich Klein as a co-host. We have Leaf CEO. Yes. We have Leaf CEO Brian Gray as one of our co-hosts. We have Dr. Beckett himself as one of the co-hosts. And then for the younger generation, we got Brody the Kid. Probably, how he's 13 years old, it blows my mind. He's smarter than some 35-year-olds I know in this hobby. It's baffling. And then a couple of new co-hosts that we had, Texas Card Dude, Brad Bethune, and Ziggy. Just an absolutely incredible roster of people. You also have Eric Norton from Beckett and Beckett Presents. Exactly. Exactly. As well. Yes. Yeah. I do. I gotta say, I love what you guys are doing on Hobby Hotline. Thanks. And I love the time slot. Early morning. For me, it's 9 a.m. on a Saturday. And I can wake up, have a coffee, and listen to fresh hobby content. Come on, there's nothing like it. And the cast of characters that you have, and it's mixed up each week. And it's a call-in show. I called in this morning, and you brought me on the screen, and there I was on Hobby Hotline, not hosting a show, which is nice. It's nice to be a guest, right? It's nice to be a guest on the show. It is. You get to relax, right? So I think it's awesome, and I really hope you guys don't slow down. Keep it going. It's a wonderful show. I totally enjoy watching it, listening to it, and calling into it, and also having you guys on my show as guests to really dive into who you guys all are individually. And I've had John Newman, I've had Rich Klein, I've had Brian Gray, I've had Eric Norton, I've had you now. I've had Dr. Beckett on the show. I've had almost the whole lineup. So now I got to talk to Brad. I got to talk to Mike. I got to talk to Brody and see if I can get everybody on who's ever been a host on. And your NASCAR fellow as well. Although I don't think I could keep a conversation going on that topic. But no worries. So that's great, man. Yeah, you're definitely very active in the content world. You do cards for a living through your business. Tell us a bit about what you do with Vintage Breaks. Sure. No, I actually I do quite a bit with them on Vintage. They have a couple of different offshoots of Vintage Breaks. They have Vintage Breaks South and Vintage Breaks West, and then the main headquarters, Vintage Breaks North. And so for Vintage Breaks South, I work with someone Chris Gilmore, who used to own Freedom Cardboard way back in the day, and now works over there at Vintage Breaks. And I pretty much provide comment. I do some breaking for him, but more provide commentary during the breaks and discussion. Because the way they do it, it's not really just when a break fills, they go live. They go live for like pretty much almost 24/7 every single day. And so for the 7-8 hours that they're on, I'll be there almost as a quote unquote hype man / expert, hobby discussionist, stuff like that. Interact with the viewers, talk with them, and we talk everything from, the hobby, sports, everything, so that's what I do for Vintage Breaks. It's a lot of fun, and it really has helped build a really fun community, at least as opposed to just ripping open some packs real quick.
Yeah, for sure. All right. S. Fleming, if you're still there, thank you. Good night. Thanks for tuning in. Todd Corpora says, good show, Drew and Jeremy. Thank you so much. And Joe, welcome to the show, my man. Welcome to the show. Cardboard Nostalgia says, fractional shares of stock are very popular in Robinhood. The crypto markets are fractional. Even a traditional ETF is fractional. Young people are more confident in the idea of fractional ownership. Well, good to know. I mean, I don't disagree with any of that. Yeah. I think I can't speak as much to what young people are comfortable or confident in right now, but I'll trust you, Billy, assuming you're younger than me and have your finger on that pulse better than I do. But I think young people are just used to digital more so than, I'm in my late 40s, you're in your late 30s, Drew. I mean, I think we're a little bit, maybe a bit more so, but I try and stay as current as I can and keep on top of technology and even doing this kind of thing, right? So, I hear what you're saying, Billy, and sounds reasonable to me. So thank you for the comment. So let's switch gears here. Let's talk a little bit about grading now, Drew, because I mean, grading, we said earlier, obviously it's a humongous part of this hobby. And over with the pandemic, we saw both Beckett and PSA get backlogged in a major way. They're both out there hiring. I mean, we're all getting emails saying these guys are hiring. It's up to you if you want to give up buying and selling cards to go grade them, which I think is a big challenge. I think finding graders is very difficult. As I learned on Hobby Hotline this morning, the vintage grader from BGS just went to the new CGC grading company, the comic book grading company. So that's a bit of a hit for Beckett to take. They now got to replace somebody on top of looking for more staff, along with PSA looking for more graders. They need to find now find a leading vintage card grader. That's not easy to do. So, I mean, they've got all these backlogs. They're in this big hiring frenzy. They're trying to work through the backlogs. And the question I'm going to pose to you, Drew, is, do you think that all these cards are backlogged? And I've heard the term the junk slab era. And what I'm wondering is, once Beckett and PSA make their way through these backlogs, is there going to be even more supply in the market? Because there's a lot of cards sitting there waiting to hit the market once they're graded, slab, shipped to the owners, who then can list them on eBay and other auction houses. What's going to happen at that point, Drew?
I don't think we're in a junk slab era. Do I think people slab some stuff unnecessarily? Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I think some stuff doesn't need to be slabbed, and there's probably going to be some junk slabs, just like there's junk singles, junk products, everything. But I don't necessarily think so. I think now more than ever, I mean, PSA is not dropping their price. We talked about it today on Hobby Hotline. That price isn't going down. It's only going to keep going up. And so you've already seen from this last increase, which was very little, a very, very small increase. For the first time in 6 months, I'm flooded with gradable cards that I can buy to grade, because that's something that I do. Before, for the last 6 months, you couldn't find anything because everyone was sending everything. So it's already caused a lot of people to stop. When they keep raising that price. Whenever, like myself and Brian were talking today, it'd be nice if they would just pick the number they want, just go on and make the jump and put the number out there and leave it, no matter how high it is, whatever it is, cut down on some of that. But there'll probably be some cards that, the pop reports are pretty high on. But I mean, I look at cards, I look at the pop reports on some cards, and they're still so small compared to how many cards are out there, compared to how big the production run is, Now, like you said, there's a lot that still needs to be graded. After they catch up with all of that, I'd like to see out of those, we hear million card backlog. Well, if that's vintage and modern, that's a million cards over 100 and some years, that it might not really be all that bad. So I don't know if we're in a junk slab era, but all I see is the value of slabs rising, honestly. I think the value of 10s and 9s, especially 9s, probably even more than 10s. I think you're going to see 9s get a lot more love and attention because people are going to realize that not every card that's coming out of a pack is near gem, and, they're going to go.
And yeah, I'm with you, man. I forget which content provider it was, content creator it was, but the headline on the video was, with the prices going up for PSA grading, will the values of PSA graded cards come down? And to me, that was just ass backwards. I mean, I think it's going to force them up because it just that's just logical. So I maybe need to go back and watch that video to maybe understand the angle that particular person was taking. But to me, I think that graded cards are going to go up in value more because it costs more to grade a card. So
exactly,
you're not going to be able to. And as time goes by, we're going to see fewer lower value cards being graded, right?
Yes.
Fewer cards that maybe in that $50 and less range being graded. And I like some of those cards graded in my collection because I like the looks of them slabbed and I want them in there, and uniformity with the rest of my set or whatever. But I think we're going to see the pricing of graded cards go up, especially on that lower end, that the whatever I'll say, the $0 to $200-$300 range cards, because instead of it being $10 to $15 to $20 to grade, now it's going to be $50 plus to grade. So I think so too. And then as far as the supply on the market, I think we're going to see a bigger, I think we're going to see two things happen. First, we're going to see, once the Beckett and PSA catches up on their backlog, you're going to see a wave of cards hit the market, maybe all at once. And that might seem like it's like there's an oversupply, but that's going to quickly reverse because of the price increases, especially if these price increases are permanent. And if you just think about anything in life, it's a lot, who lowers their prices if they don't need to? And also you think about the income tax. Income tax came about to fund the war. The war is ended and they never took it away. So why would PSA or Beckett lower their price? I'm not saying they won't, but it's going to be a lot easier just to leave it as is. And
I'm saying they won't. They won't.
Yeah, it's hopefully I had Jeremy Murray, the VP of grading for Beckett, on the show, and he said their intention is to lower them when they can. So we'll see if that comes to fruition or not.
Now they may create new affordable options, and they may put different things into play, but I don't see them lowering the premium, get them back in 10, 20 days. I don't see those dropping. Now, maybe there are other ones, economy stuff. Sure, absolutely. But they're get them back pretty quick type stuff. No, I don't see them lowering that, because if they do, the backlog's just going to come right back. And then it's going to be risen again. I mean, from a business standpoint, it doesn't make sense to me, at least from them. But hey, I mean, I don't run Beckett for a reason. So
okay, I want to jump through a few more comments, and I want to ask you your opinion on two other things in terms of grading. So first, App Free says, very much enjoyed my first live experience of the show. I'll catch the rest in the archive. Thanks for what you do, guys. Keep the content coming. Thank you, App Freeze. Hopefully you're seeing this then in reruns later, and appreciated having it tonight. Paul says, friends don't let friends slab pro set. Yep, there's truth to that. also says, I do like the term junk slab era. I like the term too. I hope we don't have it, but I do think it's a neat sounding term.
Yeah.
Billy says, how many cards do you have backlogged at PSA BGS at the moment, Drew? Do you have a bunch there right now?
Oh yeah, tons. Probably not that many actually, because I normally do the quick turnarounds if I can. None at BGS right now. Just got some of them back this week. Still have some at SGC, some vintage stuff. But PSA I probably have about like 150 or so. But they're all due here in the next couple of weeks. And I mean, the 20-day is really only taking about 35 to 40, which is, it's double. It's ridiculous, but it sounds asinine, but that's actually quicker than usual. So I'll take it. It is what it is. But you really have to judge right now if you want to grade, because I mean, if you want to grade and get your card back at least for next season, you're looking at $50 a card. And that changes what you're gonna send in, and especially me, who was someone that was like last year, I was sending in tons of Zion Hoops rookies, buying them for $2, slabbing them, selling them for $100. I mean, it was like clockwork, and not doing that anymore, not sending those Hoops $2 rookies in. So it changes quite a bit, but about 125. Something like that.
Oh, there you go. Okay, there you go. Seb says, buy collector universe stock. So this is interesting because, one thing, they're going to get more money for their service, but and this isn't kind of in contrast to that, but I was thinking about, I have a lot of cards that I've got 300 cards right now that I'm waiting to send to PSA and or BGS. But with the price increases, I'm now priced out. The cards just aren't worth it to get into those slabs. So now I'm thinking maybe one touches are what I'll do. It's different, but now I need to go out and buy 300 one touches, which is, Ultra Pro or BCW, instead of giving that money or more money, but that same money to PSA or BGS. So I wonder if we're going to see now. I mentioned to someone the other day. It was Mike over at Eastridge, one of the local card shops here, and he said, "Yeah, but did you know that Ultra Pro makes PSA slabs for them?" Yeah. And I think Beckett's getting into the supplies business with the Beckett Shield and doing their own supply manufacturing, apparently, or maybe they're outsourcing it, but their own branded manufacturer, their own branded accessory or supplies now. So. But I mean, I was just thinking about, I'm like, well, maybe Ultra Pro is the way to go, because all these people who are slabbing their cards that were worth, between $5 and $100 aren't going to do that anymore. So what are you going to do? You're going to buy Ultra Pro products or BCW products. So maybe there's an investment potential there as well. But as far as buying collector universe stock, I've never bought or sold that company's shares, and I have nothing against it. But I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a good time to do that. Maybe it is or isn't. Well, time will tell. But I wanted to ask you, Drew.
Sure.
I've been talking about PSA and BGS. What are your thoughts on SGC? And I mean, they've been making a run at the market over during 2020, and they tried to capitalize when PSA and BGS went into backlog during the shutdown during the pandemic. How do you think SGC has responded to
couple of them right there for you.
You got some cards there, but Drew, how do you think them as a company have responded to the opportunity that arose for them, and how do you see them really? What do you see their prospect being on taking a bigger piece of the pie than they already have?
Okay, well, I thought that they did a wonderful job of bombarding. Now, first, it is interesting to note that prior to the pandemic, they actually had their 3 biggest months in a row ever consecutively, December, January, and February. So an increase every month. So they were building up to this. I think the pandemic hitting actually just ended up taking that growth that they were getting and accelerating it 1,000-fold. Now, these guys grew up very close to me. I know them very well. I know their families very well. Our families know each other. They were doing this out of basically an apartment when all of this started. Like, that's what it was. Like, they would have friends come over and help them in the garage and everything. And then through this pandemic, when their orders go up 500, 600,000%, they're trying to move into a building. They can't, it takes forever. So they get backed up. And that backup really is one thing that hurt them the most, because the advantaged SGC, because they in the market right now, they sell for less. Now, some cards that's only for modern cards, they sell for less, ultra modern. So the advantage was getting them graded quick, the quick turnaround. You could, if you're flipping cards and moving cards for a living, then you can sell 10 of them before you can get one back from PSA. And so, you make up for it. But when you're waiting just as long as PSA, for ultra modern, it defeats the purpose of sending. And so, they're doing a very good job of catching up. They're very upfront. They're very good at talking to you. Their customer service is top notch. I won't say a bad thing in the world about Peter. I think he's great. They're very honest. I think they're a good company. And I think they have the potential to really be a major player. They've hired some incredible graders. They've hired graders that have worked at all of the major grading companies that everyone loves so much that we've been talking about. A lot of their graders have past history working there and working high up there, including their ultra modern graders. But I think they've got a little ways to go, especially with CCG coming in and all of that. I think they're somebody that I'm really interested to see how they come, because the comic book crossover has been so big. I want to see how that company does. But SGC's definitely got something. And for vintage, I mean, you see it even going back to 90s and 80s cards. If it's in an SGC slab and it's a 9 or a 10, it's commanding massive money, possibly more than that PSA 9 or 10 did.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that SGC's been around longer than Beckett has in terms of grading. They were original with PSA, and back in the day, I remember being like the late 2000s, like just 2008, 7, 8, 9, 10, going to the National, and you'd see as many SGC cards as you would PSA. They were mostly like 1950 and earlier, mostly the real pre-war stuff.
Right.
But there were thousands, tens of thousands of SGC slabs in the room, and then they seemed to kind of not go away, but just fade away a little bit. And now they're making another run. So, I wish them nothing but success. And I know a lot of people are turning to them. A lot of people like that. I like the people call the slab a tuxedo, because
I love it.
It looks like you're dressing up your card in a tuxedo. I think that's really cool language to use for it. And that's actually something that could be a competitive advantage for them. Just the fact that the hobby has already taken, as assigned that word to their slab. I think it's awesome. And the other one I was going to ask you about was, I think it's called CGC or CGGC, whatever the comic book one, whatever they're called, whatever their acronym will be. I mean, my thoughts, Drew, is that I think it's like you were saying, they have an advantage because they already have a grading business, a collectibles grading business. And they got money behind them, is what I understand. So, and they've already, they've hired away apparently a key grader from Beckett. So that's an advantage they have now. I wonder, their slabs need to look good on cards, not just they have to. It doesn't matter if they look good on comics; they have to look good on cards now. And I've seen a couple, I think, samples, and they're a little chunkier at the top, is what I noticed. A little more room for the slip, for the label at the top, or the flip as we call it. But what do you think in terms of the looks of their slabs? Have you seen it yet?
Well, unless they themselves have released an example of what the cards will look like since they were on my show, no. When I was on the show, they said that they were going through multiple different iterations, and they have like 5 or 6 different variations that they may use. If they put out a picture yet, I have not seen it. I'm familiar with what their comics and stuff like that look like, but I think you're dead on. It's gonna determine what the slab looks like. Beyond that, this is gonna be a company that's gonna be advertising. If you thought SGC was advertising, get ready. I mean, these guys have got the pockets to advertise. They've got a major following and major respect which is I think the most important thing is they're highly respected in another collectible industry, which is very important. I mean, huge. PSA with coins, that's really what gives them the validity in cards. That's what gave them the validity when they jumped into cards. And so that's why I look at them and say, okay, well, you've got the money, you've got the validity. If you can make the slabs look nice, then, that's something that could be a dangerous company, at least if I'm PSA or BGS.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yam says it very well here. He says CGC doesn't limp into markets. They're serious. And they have a huge advantage by the fact that they're not a new company coming into the business. We've seen lots of new companies come in and they get a fraction of the market share, a fraction of a percent of the market share, negligible.
Yeah.
So CGC is going to be a force to be reckoned with, I believe, as long as that slab is nice, because at the end of the day, that's as important as the looks of your card, because you're permanently putting into this slab. So very important. I want to thank Steve Menzie for confirming it's CGC. And by the sounds of it, I have to think if Steve Menzie, again, Steve is the gentleman who owns the Sports Card Expo that's out of Toronto twice a year, but has now gone virtual. He's partnered up with the Chicago Spectacular. I believe that gentleman's name is Mitch Adelstein. And by the sounds of it, perhaps CGC is going to be taking a booth at the virtual expo, which is November 21st and 22nd. So everybody watch for that. I was a part of the first one. It was an absolute blast. I had a great time. It was one of my best shows ever. And this should be a lot of fun coming up in the third weekend of November. I want to bring Colin Murray's question. Hello, Colin. He says the price of high-end raw commons should go up because they won't get sent in. It's interesting, right? All of a sudden, that's a good point. And you would know, Colin, you did a lot of that raw stuff. And I know Colin's transitioned to more graded stuff, but good point. Thank you for bringing it up. And then I want to get to Canner Collect's comment up here. With issues in grading companies, do you see any collectors moving towards raw? I don't need a card and a slab unless it's a vintage for authentication. Well, good question, Canner. And I mean, I'm kind of a hybrid. For me, certain cards are still going to get graded. And certain cards just won't because I'm priced out of them. So I think you are going to see more people sticking with raw or buying, going to one touches, as I said earlier. It's about all. I think we kind of covered that topic somewhat anyway, maybe since you posted, Canner. But those are my thoughts on that. Drew, anything to add?
No, I think you're dead on. I mean, you're dead on.
Okay, cool. Jake says, I'm looking forward to some automation to grading, especially to push through bulk or economy, even if it's just for the centering. I think some automation in moderation can help. So PSA, or was it PSA, or somebody recently announced that they were moving to, I think it's PSA, that they were moving to some automation. I don't believe it's got anything to do with the practice of grading the card. The grading cards by computer is never going to happen. I don't care what anybody says. It's never, ever going to happen. You can argue, you can post whatever you want. I'm pretty certain it's never going to happen. And, unless one of the things that would have to be overcome is the card companies would have to make sure that every card that came out of the pack 100% flat. So Prism cards would not be able to exist. They wouldn't be eligible for it ever. Prism, Chrome, nothing that gets any warp or bend to it, which basically means any card that has more than one material in it. So unless you're talking paper, it's impossible. It's never going to happen. But what can happen is automation in terms of organizing the back end, organizing the shipping. That can easily happen. Just like, that's how Amazon does their. Amazon is all robotics and automation in terms of filling orders. So if PSA can bring that kind of technology into their back end, I can definitely see them processing things faster. But grading, that's not what they're getting at, I don't believe, and I don't think it'll ever get there. But hey, that's a great discussion, and I know there's lots of opinions on it. Anything to add to that, Drew?
No, I think you're dead on. The automation's going to come in the production side. We talked on that about Hobby Hotline a little bit today. It's definitely going to come on the processing side. And I mean, there's hospital machines that you can reprogram if you wanted to computerize try and grade cards, but the accuracy is just not good enough. Like you said, on certain cards, it's just not possible. I've heard certain companies talk about possibly having some automation in terms of surface. grading and grading parts of a card, but it's never going to be throw a card in a machine and it's going to pop out and tell you if it's a 10. Like it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Frankie, welcome, says Pokemon CGC cards are doing really well in resales, and that does not surprise me because it's more of that the comic world, you know, the gaming and comics world. So it makes sense. Billy agrees on automation. Karn discussed in a previous episode of Sports Cards Live. So that's true. I'll mention right now, it was episode 5 or 6 I had. So going back to late April, early May. And I had on the gentleman who's joining me on After Hours tonight to talk about Pokemon. But he commissioned a study at a very reputable university among honor students to look into whether grading by computer could occur. And they concluded that pretty much that it couldn't. I'm not going to get into the details, and I don't remember them all, but that was one of the things. But Billy goes on to say, why couldn't a perfect copy of a Luca Prism be used as an example for an automated program to grade the thousands of submissions of that card? And I think the one of the main reasons is because the cards aren't always flat. Is a major issue. So unless you want a machine that could have a piece of dust in it or something in it to actually have contact with with 100% of the surfaces, both sides of your card. I mean, I don't, but that's one way to maybe get around that. And another thing is you need to look at a card from all angles. So you need to hold the card and move it around all angles. And I mean, maybe you could put it in, put a couple of clothespins on it and then rotate it around in a circle and have the cameras look at it from all angles. I don't see it, but from my understanding and my thoughts personally are that it's just not going to work. But let's keep on going. Yep, agreed. Love that idea from Karn. Yeah, so Karn's study did come up negative. These PhD students at a very reputable university, their conclusion was that it's just not possible to grade cards by computer at this time. Paul says, I think the power of graded is eBay and online sales. It's somewhat reassuring knowing a grade versus trying to discern fuzzy Sasquatch sighting photos on an eBay listing. And, that comes back to why grading, was born in the first place. It was born in the first place because the internet came about. No internet, no grading. Internet came about. The global economy became a thing, the ability to buy something in Los Angeles from somebody in Tokyo in an instant became possible almost overnight. And so what happened was people were buying sports cards on eBay sight unseen. And grading gave some comfort to what you were getting at the time. And that's the only really only reason why grading came into existence. I'm not saying it's the only purpose it serves, but that was the impetus for it to become for the grading industry to pop up out of nowhere because of buying cards sight unseen. And that's never going to stop now. We're not ever going to stop buying cards sight unseen. It's only growing. It's only happening more and more. Look, there's been very few card shows in 2020. More people have been turning to virtual, whether it's, eBay, ComC, virtual card shows and other, Facebook, Instagram, all that, auction houses. So that's just only going to continue. And so we need grading. You need, as a buyer, as a consumer, you need grading because it gives you some comfort, Just like if you're buying a car, from 500 miles away and you're going to send your brother who lives there to go look at it for you. That's your brother is grading that car for you because you're not there to see it. You're buying it sight unseen. So that's enough about that, I believe. Would there be a market for low-end cards being encapsulated but not graded? If you can encapsulate for bulk, similar pricing to magnetics, it might be an attractive option for protection purposes. Yeah, and I'd want them to authenticate it too. Maybe not grade it, but authenticate it. Billy, I think there's something there, perhaps if the price is right to get it that way. Veteran collectors who've been collecting for all that have a large amount of graded cards in their collection could at least keep that uniformity, keep the cards stacking nicely, right? Which I think is important. It's important to me, I know, as a collector. Yeah. And then Jake jumps in and says, remember the days of buying cards on eBay without any pictures? I sometimes think about that and wonder how we did it. Yeah, and that's the hobby overall was a lot different back then, Jake. But yeah, that's the good old days, right? The good old days.
Yep.
Good stuff. All right, man. maybe we should move into the Sports Cards Live 5.
Sure.
Are you ready for that?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
All right, let's get into it. So the first question in Sports Cards Live 5 for you, Drew, is what is your favorite card in your personal collection?
Favorite card in my personal collection would probably be, I actually have it right here. The very first rainbow that I ever built as a kid that I kept, it's an old Upper Deck Black Diamond Patrick Waugh rainbow, just a nice old 3-card rainbow, nothing special, nothing super expensive, but super sentimental. And Patrick Waugh, one of my favorite players on my favorite team. So that's probably my favorite. I've kept. When I found my cards, I was like, Mom, I don't care if you don't find any other ones, just find those 3. I remembered them that whole time off. So got to go with those right now.
Oh, man, I love it. And I love that they're not super high value cards, but they're, that gold is at a 10. That's a rare card. So
yeah,
very nice. Paul says nice rainbow. Question 2 for you, Drew, is what is your highest priority want card that's attainable? What's the next thing you're actually going to buy for yourself?
I'm actually chasing at a Mosaic Football the Luke Kuechly parallels. So any of the Luke Kuechly Mosaic parallels that I don't have, chasing after that rainbow.
Good answer. Question 3 is where's your favorite place to buy cards?
Score More Sports Cards up in Winston-Salem. That actually, if it sounds familiar, it's actually the person who won the Panini NBA Player of the Day just was picked from that store location. But Score More Sports in Winston. Awesome shop. Good people.
Very cool. I love hearing that. I love hearing an LCS for that answer. 4th question, Drew, is if you could change one thing about the hobby, what would it be?
Oh,
I forgot to send you these questions today, didn't I?
Yeah, you're good though. I like it better on the fly. I don't need them.
Forgot, man. I'm sorry.
I don't need them ahead of time. The thing I would change about the hobby, the negativity, just the constant negativity through social media and everything. I mean, so many people get so angry and so upset and blame so many wrong people for things and just don't think about it. Like, just chill out, have some fun, relax. Like, I mean, there's times where I have to step away from it and half of my entire business revolves around it. You know what I mean? Like, and I just have to stay off of social media because of like the negativity sometimes. So that would probably be it.
Fair, man. Fair. The last question is, what is your biggest hobby purchase or sale regret?
Oh God, that's easy. When Luka came out, the hobby was not how it was back today, at least with retail. But I was someone that loved to open up a lot of product. So I was working at Lowe's corporate, so I was making decent money, and I was going around and buying every single blaster box of Prism I could find. Ended up with about 18, 20 Luka base and about 10 or 12 silvers. Graded them all with PSA. All of them came back 10s except for 2 that were 9s, and sold all of them for about his rookie year for well before the silvers were $1,000. So yeah,
man, that
yeah.
I asked that question to all the guests, and usually the answer has to do with something that they purchased. That but I like hearing the sale ones. I'm sorry to hear that, but you know what? The fact of the matter is, everybody in the hobby has stories like that right now. So it's just fun to hear kind of the particulars, what they were particularly. I want to just run back here. Frankie says, I remember paying by money order, buying cards on eBay, right?
Oh yeah, big time.
No doubt. Okay, so let's move on now. I'm just going to go back here. We're going to take this comment off. And Jake says, my regret was also a Luka sale. I feel you, Drew. That's right, Drew. That's right. Awesome. Sorry, Jake. Okay, we're now going to move into the segment that I call, and I gave a preview by accident a few minutes ago, called my PC card of the day. And this is something where I show a card or two. I'm actually going to show 3 tonight. Sweet. That relate somewhat to my guest of the evening. And so Drew is a Colorado Avalanche fan. So Drew, I have some three pretty cool Colorado Avalanche cards that I want to show you.
Nice.
And show the viewers as well. So let's see how this goes. Here we go. There we go.
Oh.
So this is a in the game ultimate memorabilia, ultimate emblem, 1/1 Joe Sakic, and that is a shoulder patch from the Colorado Avalanche jersey of the Yeti's foot. So you're probably familiar with that patch. I don't know if you've ever seen the whole patch on one card before.
No.
But that's a card that I've had pretty much since the product came out. And I love these ultimate emblems, these big 1/1s. In future years, they actually had a picture of the player in the corner, which is nice, or a drawing of the player in the corner, I should say.
Yeah.
So I have 3 cards. I want to show you the Joe Sakic. I also have a Peter Forsberg, a similar card. Thankfully, the patch is oriented differently to make it a little bit different from the Joe Sakic. But this is a card that I love. And we're talking Hall of Famers here. Peter Forsberg is one of the greatest Swedish players of all time. And he gets a lot of hobby love for a guy who had a shortened career due to health issues, but a great player. And then the final one I want to show you, Drew, is this Milan Hajduk from 2011. These are all 1/1s, and I collected these 1/1s very heavily from 2008 when they first came out until today. I've got about almost 90 of these cards in my collection, if you can believe it. And these are the 3 from Colorado that I had, and I thought I'd share them today as my Sports Cards Live PC cards of the day.
Those are gorgeous, man. I love them, and I actually love that set. I have a Patrick Waugh from that same series sitting right here. I love those, and Hajduk was one of my favorites back in the day. So, and of course, Forsberg and Sakic, but Hajduk was one of my guys. So.
Of course.
Very nice.
It's nice here. Hajduk is, if you're not a hockey guy, you're like, you don't know who Milan Hajduk is. Most likely you've never heard of him. Yeah. But Drew can attest he was an excellent player. He played on some great teams with Colorado there at some good times. And an excellent playmaker. So that's the PC card of the day, or cards of the day for today. Couple more comments are rolling in here. Billy says, is Nathan MacKinnon the best player in the NHL? Well, I'm probably in the minority that thinks he's right up there. If he's not the best, he's like, it's between him and Connor McDavid right now for overall players. It's McKinnon might be the better player even, but you're going to get a lot of argument from that. Connor McDavid is such a skilled player. He's so fast. Connor McDavid can do things skating at like 30 kilometers an hour it blows your mind what he can do with the puck when he's at full speed on his skates. Whereas Nathan MacKinnon is just a beast of a player. He's a playmaker. He sees the game, but he's got a bit more power to his game. So I think there's definitely an argument for that, Billy, that Nathan MacKinnon might be the best player in the NHL. And that said, his cards are undervalued if you think he is, compared to Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, Alex Ovechkin. Although Crosby and Ovechkin are all-time greats, legends, icons, they are undervalued, in my opinion, compared to Connor McDavid. Jay Bricks, welcome to the show. Glad to have you. And everybody, if you just got here, don't forget, in about 40 minutes' time, I will be coming back with Sports Cards Live After Hours. And this is going to be a fun episode because of what happened yesterday. It's going to be a Pokemon-themed episode. I might show a couple of my pickups from this week. But it's going to be fun because I'm not a Pokemon guy, but I'm trying to learn about it. And I'm going to have on my go-to guy as far as Pokemon goes, Karn Rai. And we're also going to have on Jeff Wolf, who is the president of Iconic Auctions. And they sold the PSA 10 Charizard last night to rapper Logic for $220,000, breaking records. I believe the previous high was the Steve Aoki purchase of $170,000 that we talked about earlier. So you'll definitely want to stick around or come back later, watch that. We're gonna talk to Jeff. We're gonna talk to Karn, and I'm kind of looking to this after hours episode to be a bit of a tutorial, if you will, for me, a research for me into Pokemon, because I do want to learn about it. I am becoming. I'll admit it. I'm a cardboard guy, Drew. I like sports cards, but I'm a cardboard guy, so it's tough for me to ignore a whole segment of cardboard. Just because I'm this show's called Sports Cards Live, right? It's not called Pokemon Cards Live, but I want to learn about it, and I don't want to miss out, and I want to know about it. I think I should know about it, and I'm finding what I've learned so far to be enjoyable. So After Hours tonight is going to be a Pokemon themed episode. And I'll also mention to everybody, if you are Pokemon, if you do like Pokemon, and I haven't announced this yet to anybody, October 31st, Halloween night, I'm going to have Karn back again for a full Pokemon episode of Sports Cards Live. And by then, I may even have some cards to show. We will see.
Nice.
Card Insights, one of my favorite Instagram accounts. Welcome to the show. And Card Insights on Instagram just had to update. They're now called Card Insights 2. So if you're not following them on Instagram yet, you're looking for Card Insights 2. It says, I picked up many Ronald Acuna Jr. cards in 2018, based on Drew's recommendations. Nice call, Drew. Shout out, Drew.
Yeah, no problem, bud. Yeah, I'm sure you're getting some offers right now. I know I am. Hold them a little longer. Don't get rid of all of them.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Eric says, I try and keep an open mind to all cards.
Yeah.
That's the approach, man.
Yeah, you have to.
Well, you know what, Drew, I agree, but you don't have to. If you're open-minded, and I think you're smart and you're maybe a little bit opportunistic and you are, just being open-minded is a much more enjoyable way to approach life. And anyway, so I recommend it. But yeah, totally agree with you, Eric. Paul notes that Jeremy has Charizard on eBay watch list. He does, Paul. He does. But I got more than just Charizard on my watch list, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Eric, thank you very much. Eric, thanks. F1 is interesting to Eric. See, and I respect that 100%. Mm-hmm. Doesn't interest me because I've never followed the sport. Yeah. I'm more interested. I'd be more interested in some tennis cards because I've watched tennis my whole life. I'm, Venus Williams, Andre Agassi, those guys interest me in terms of cards. And now Bianca Andreescu, who's actually an Upper Decks Goodwin champions this year. She's a Grand Slam winner, a Canadian like myself. I'll tell you, I was up out of my seats when she won that, like I was up out of my seats when the Raptors won the championship last year. It was very exciting for us Canadians. Very exciting. And Eric confirms, very true. Yep, it's just a good way to lead life and be open-minded to everything. And why ignore a segment? And, if you look at these Pokemon cards, and I mean, it's funny to say, I never imagined myself saying this, but I've looked at them so much now that some of these things are, Drew, you mentioned earlier, cardboard, sports cards. It's art. It's the fine art of today's generation. We don't care about Rembrandts and Picassos. We being most of us. I speak for most of us.
Right. Yeah.
We don't care about that stuff. I'm not putting $20 million on my wall in a painting. I'd much rather have sports cards. So, but Pokemon is actually art in that, with the sports cards, you take a photograph of a player. You're not making up what they look like. Pokemon is like comic book art. It's from scratch. And to me, not only is art, but it's I don't even want to call it a cultural phenomenon because to me that has connotations of maybe a lack of permanence. I believe that the Pokemon phenomenon is permanent in culture now. And by permanent, I mean like the next 100 years at least. Jump in.
No. I completely agree with you. And I am so glad that my son got into Pokemon early and dragged me to buy so much of that stuff early on. So I kind of had a little bit of knowledge on what it was and everything. But I completely agree with you. The Pokemon market is calling it a phenomenon is almost, it's definitely, if it's a phenomenon, it's one that's not going away. It is so. We talked about international stuff earlier on this show. Pokemon internationally, are you kidding me? And you see the people in it now. Pokemon is here to stay, and it is a massive segment of the hobby. You're seeing a lot of crossover from a lot of people getting into both industries, people that were into Pokemon getting into sports cards and vice versa. And I think that's only good for the hobby. I think it's only good for both individual markets. And like you said, you look at some of these cards that my son pulls in, they're gorgeous. They are beautiful works of art.
They are. I believe Pokemon is ingrained in society right now and worldwide, not just Asia. It's global now. It's ingrained. Logan Paul, as I said at the beginning of the episode, so I know we have some new viewers that weren't here at an hour and 55 minutes ago, that, Logan Paul on his live stream last night, he had over a million unique viewers watching him open up an original box of the original booster packs. You know, that he sold off those packs for $11,111 each. It was a charity event, but I watched that live stream. At any given time, there was no less than 250,000 people watching it, up to over 300,000 people at a time, with a million uniques overall that he reported today on Instagram. That's more than you'll get for any sports card at any time, any show, any break, and again, maybe combined. So it's here to stay. It's a monster segment, and I do not begrudge any sports card collector that says it's not for me. That's fine. I mean, being open-minded doesn't mean you have to like everything. It means you maybe consider them and then decide it's not for you. Nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
But, I liked comic book art. I never cared about the characters. I would never read X-Men. Just me. I never read X-Men, but I thought the art was cool. The covers were cool.
Yeah.
I kind of have the same approach with Pokemon. I almost want to see the movie or play the game just to get a better understanding. And I do want to do that.
Right.
But to me, the art, along with the widespread acceptance of these things as collectibles and investables, has me very interested. So, and what do we have here? Eric says, it's cool finally seeing Drew after hearing him on podcasts for the last year. And keep in mind, Eric, you can see Drew on the YouTube channel Hobby Hotline, where they do the Saturday morning show, which I'm a big fan of. So don't be afraid to check that out. It's a great way to start your Saturday morning. And this user says it was only a matter of time that Pokemon got the attention it deserves. Look at Magic the Gathering, released in 1993. Lots of interest from players, collectors, and investors. Yes, if that is Jeff Wolf commenting, I completely agree. And again, we will be live with Jeff Wolf from Iconic Auctions in Carnarvon in about 35 minutes. Yam says that 4.6 million people have already watched the replay of his box opening. I mean, we're going to have maybe 500 viewers of this show, and he's got 4.6 million viewers to open up a box of Pokemon cards. I play that down because it's a serious box. It's like opening up a box of 50 Topps baseball, right? Like, it's of that magnitude. Brian Palmer says, I've never played Pokemon in my life, but I find the current explosion strangely and utterly compelling. Yeah, we are not alone, Brian. We are not alone. Eric, I need to catch that one too. Good pun. Brian says, also great episode tonight, gentlemen. Thank you, Brian. Billy says, Magic the Gathering Rare Lotus PSA 10 signed by the no deceased product creator, recently sold for $250K. Well, that would be more than what the Charizard is sold for, but that's a big number. That's a big number for a card that is just of a flower. It's not even. I mean, I don't even think it's nice to look at. I understand its rarity and how cool it is, but I mean, there's no real aesthetics to it. Well, I shouldn't say that. For me, and I get why people can find it beautiful still. It's still early though. Yes, it is. Eli, welcome to the show. And Paul tells Eli how to get his name on the screen. Thank you for that, Paul. Always a great job helping me out there, and I greatly appreciate it. Well, Drew. Yeah, man. I mean, listen, we've hit our 2 hours. We've covered everything we planned to.
Cool.
We can we've done the Sports Cards Live 5. We've done the PC card of the day. I think we can wind down. So, man, I'm going to take this opportunity to thank you for joining me tonight. I also want to thank you for having me on your Let Me Get That Podograph podcast last month. I had a blast doing it with you. I listened to it back. I want to say your production value is excellent. Your editing was great too, because there was that one point where my daughter came in and I'm like, oh man, you're gonna have to edit this out. I couldn't hear the edit. So great job. You're very experienced at it. I love what you're doing with Hobby Hotline. Keep up the great work, man. If anyone wants to listen to you want to find Drew on Twitter and Facebook. It's on the ticker right now. LGTP Podcast is where you can find him. And again, you see his logo up in the top left of his screen right now. Let Me Get That Podograph. Search it out. Great podcast, just like his partner, John Newman, who does Sports Card Nation podcast. Another one that I will be on later this month. So we're kind of, we're doing the tours here. We're having a good time with the content. And Drew, again, thank you so much, man. Awesome guest. And I know I just want to say, it's probably been nice and relaxing. You're not having to run the show tonight.
No, hey, this is the first time actually I've ever been on StreamYard and not had to produce a show. So, hey, I love it. And thanks so much for having me on the show, man. I love having you call in on the show. Guys, feel free, if you do watch the show, please call in. That's what the show is all about, Hobby Hotline. And thank you so much for having me on, man. I love what you do, and keep up the good work.
Thanks, Drew. All right, man. You stay right there. I'm going to run through a few more comments, and we're going to sign off. And everybody, I will be signed back on brand new broadcast, the same channel, Sports Cards Live, in half an hour's time to break down the day that was the day that the world of Pokemon had yesterday. Legion, thank you so much for joining. Yam, always appreciate having you, man. And I can't wait to hear your comments in after hours. Paul, thank you so much. Terry, good to have you in the background there tonight. Late to the show after hockey, but we'll go back and watch the start. It was a great episode tonight, Terry. So thank you so much. Everybody else,